Big Gamer out here. How are you guys doing today? I'm super. Thanks for asking. So today guys, I'd like to talk to you about PlayStation 4 Pro and the PlayStation VR and kind of how the two work together. So if you've gone out and spent £350 or $400 on a PlayStation VR headset to go with your PS4, you're probably thinking, is it worth getting a Pro as well? Now, straight out the back guys, I just want to say, if you don't already have a PlayStation 4 Pro and you don't have a 4K TV, the differences you're going to get in PlayStation VR are probably not worth, spending another $400. But if you need to buy yourself a new PS4, maybe you need a bigger hard drive, maybe you have got 4K TV and you want to get some of those better improvements, or maybe you're just a stickler for frame rate, guess what guys, the PlayStation 4 Pro does improve VR performance. So I'm going to go through those and I'm going to show you some gameplay today and kind of explain a little bit about what you get from PlayStation Pro when you're using your PlayStation VR. So the first game we're going to look at today is PlayStation VR Worlds. So upon booting the game up, I did notice that the opening screen, it was very snappy, but more than anything, the areas where you're not really concentrating on, say for instance when you're looking at the title, but the areas around it like the pillars and the different environmental effects, they look a little bit crisper. So in a lot of ways, when you are trying to see something that is far away from you and you focus on that, you kind of lose some of the precision of the image around you in real life. And it's a similar thing in VR. A lot of the games, I think they get around the processing power issues by just rendering the stuff directly in front of you in a really high quality, and the stuff around the outsides kind of gets lost a little bit. So that's the first thing that I kind of noticed upon booting it up. One place in particular where this was really noticeable was during the descent. So when I was inside the shark cage looking around at the fish and stuff, I noticed that the actual cage itself and the environment you're housed within was actually rendering at a higher quality. When I was looking around at the cage itself, the actual details on the cage, things such as cables and joints and rivets, and especially even like tiny details like rust that is actually on the side of the cage itself, those items really became a lot clearer to my eye, and it made me feel a little bit more like I was actually inside the cage. And one thing that kind of drew my eyes straight away was the actual monitor that is inside the cage with you. That came across much clearer straight away. So the second game I was going to test was a new game out at the moment, and not a lot of people have got hands on for it because it is quite expensive, and that is Robinson's Journey. Now this is a game from Crytek, the makers of Crysis and Far Cry previously. This is a very demanding game, and there is a lot of loading in this game. And as I had heard from previous sites, the loading really has been helped a lot by the PlayStation 4 Pro. This is a game with like kind of a little bit more expansive environments and a lot more to render, so there is more loading involved. So this is a game that really benefits from that. This is also a game that by default your turning is different than it would be in a normal game, in that you turn as part of like a pi circle, so you're almost turning at kind of 45-degree angles, and that does help with things like motion sickness a little bit, but I've also got the feeling that this is a lot to do with the fact that when you change it to analog full control, in which case you are moving smoothly across a 360-degree axis, it does create a lot of motion blur, and that can make me quite motion sick. And what I found with the PS4 Pro is it reduced a lot of the actual blur effect, and it allowed you to move in a more smoother arc. There was no judder, there was no blurring. You can still get motion sick. I mean, it's one of those games where you've got free movement, and in VR that's always going to give you kind of 10 to 15 minutes of queasy tummy before your body adjusts and you get used to it. And over an 8-hour game like this, you can certainly do that. But I did find when actually switching to the analog control, the moving round in a 360-degree arc was a lot smoother, and I actually really appreciated that. As far as the graphics go, I mean, again, you've got a little bit of tightening of peripheral vision stuff, but I didn't notice a huge jump in visual quality. And what you got to remember, guys, is even though the PlayStation 4 Pro is capable of putting out a 4K image, that the actual PlayStation VR headset is a 1080p screen, and these are two 1080p OLED screens that are actually in front of each of your eyes. So even though it can really improve things like, texture popping and load times and judder and frame rate and stuff like that, you're not actually going to get an increase in resolution here. So the game looks great. I mean, if you haven't got Robinson's Journey, whether it's worth actually as much as they're asking at the moment, which is about $70 or at least 60, depending on if you can get a good deal for it, I think it's a little bit too high at the moment. I didn't want to do a full review on this game just because I know a lot of you out there are probably going to go elsewhere for that review. Alright, and the third game I'm going to look at is Batman VR. The first thing I want to say about Batman Arkham VR is that this is a fantastic game. As an experience, this is probably the must-have for your PlayStation VR right now. And from what I've played of the game, the PlayStation 4 Pro does actually bring it out a little bit better. So, similar to some of the other titles, the items around your immediate distance to your left and right when you're actually interacting with the environment do seem a lot clearer, and it does help with the immersion quite a bit. And this is a fantastic looking game, and despite not being able to see too great a detail in far distances, this does help a lot with the detail up close. So that's obviously of great benefit when you're looking at things like back gadgets, character models, vehicles, and items around the Batcave and around Gotham. And as we discussed before, with the loading times, this is a game that requires a fair bit of loading, and it's actually done on a black screen here, so it is nice to have those interludes actually cut down to a minimum. So overall guys, what do I think? PS4 Pro and PSVR? What I think is it does make a difference. I don't think that difference is huge, and I don't think it's necessarily worth spending an extra $100. But if you haven't got a PS4 or you need to upgrade it for say a hard drive reasons or something like that, you're going to see the benefit, and it is worth having. Now regarding PSVR, I think if it was me, if I didn't have a 4K TV, I think the £350, $400 would be better spent on a PSVR rather than upgrading to a PS4 Pro. But if you've got the money to do both, I think it is really nice to have, and it does help a lot. Now guys, I've been really impressed with PSVR so far, and even though the content has been a little inconsistent, the sheer breadth of titles available right now actually make this quite a strong launch for Sony, and I think it is worth definitely picking up a PSVR if you have the $400. Well, thanks for sticking with me guys. Hopefully you found this review useful. If so, please feel free to comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.